In a world where everything has a price, people often forget the things that can't be bought. Among them stands one truth: the worth of a human being. This is not a story about gold or power or fame. It's a story about knowing your own value, even when no one else does. Once, in a quiet village by the hills, lived an old craftsman named Elior. He carved wood into shapes that felt alive, birds that seemed ready to fly, flowers that breathed beauty into silence. He never worked for gold, he worked for peace. Each morning he would whisper to the wood, "Let's make something that speaks the truth." Years passed, and his fame grew quietly, not because he wanted it, but because truth always finds its way into people's hearts. One day, a rich merchant came from the city. He looked around the humble workshop and saw a wooden sculpture of a child holding a candle. The merchant asked, "How much for this piece?" Elior smiled gently. "It's not for sale," he said. The merchant laughed. "Everything has a price. Name yours." The old man shook his head. This one was never made to be sold. The merchant became curious. He thought, this old man must be pretending to be noble. So he said, "I'll give you 100 gold coins." Elior didn't answer. He continued sanding the wood. 500 coins. The merchant raised his voice. Still silence. At last he shouted, "Name any price. I will buy it." Then Elior looked up, his eyes soft but steady. "You cannot buy what already belongs to the soul." The merchant was confused. "What do you mean?" Elior wiped the dust from his hands, looked at the sculpture, and said quietly, "This piece was made from the last wood my father gave me before he passed away. It's not made for money, it's made for memory." The merchant stood still. Something inside him softened, the kind of silence that comes when truth enters the heart. Later that night, Elior sat under the moonlight, watching the candle inside the wooden child flicker gently. He whispered to himself, "People chase value outside, but the deepest worth is silent, unseen." He remembered how often he was told he'd never succeed without selling more, without becoming famous. But he knew the world measures by weight, while the soul measures by meaning. Weeks later, the merchant returned. But this time, his face was humble. He didn't come to buy. He came to learn. He said softly, "I have spent my life trading things, gold, silk, jewels, but none of them ever stayed. How do you find peace in saying no?" Elior smiled. "Peace doesn't come from saying no to others. It comes from saying yes to your truth." The merchant bowed, and for the first time, he felt richer than ever before. The story of Elior spread through the village, not as gossip, but as guidance. Parents told their children, "Know your worth before the world names its price." Years later, Elior's workshop still stood, filled not with gold, but with light. Every piece he made carried silence, the silence of someone who knew his value. Sometimes we think our worth depends on how others see us, on likes, applause, approval, attention. But truth is simpler. You are not valuable because you're perfect. You're valuable because you are you. There will be people who overlook you, people who replace you, people who forget you, but that does not change who you are. Gold doesn't lose its shine just because someone else fails to see it. The calmest confidence is not the one that shouts, "I'm worthy," but the one that whispers, "I don't need to prove it anymore." Maybe life is not about becoming valuable to others, but about remembering the value that's already within you. When you know your worth, you no longer chase, you attract. You no longer beg, you choose. You no longer shrink, you stand. So tonight, light your own lantern. Let it remind you of the truth Elior lived by. The world will forget what you sell, but it will always remember what you stand for. This is Mind Lantern Stories, stories that light the wisdom within you. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to remember their worth. Because the brightest light is the one that shines quietly inside.